Good evening, everybody. And welcome to this Horsham District Council Cabinet meeting on the 20th of November. Thank you very much to you all for braving the cold and coming. I have the usual housekeeping announcements. Please note the location of the fire exits. Please make sure that your mobile phones and other devices are switched to silent. And please note that an audio recording of the meeting is being made and will be published on the Council's website. Apologies for absence. I currently have none, but Joanne may have been stuck in traffic coming back from the event we were at today, so we'll have to wait and see. Minutes on pages 3 to 15 of the agenda. The minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on the 25th of September are there in the agenda. I move that these minutes are approved as a correct record. Are you in agreement? Marvellous, thank you very much. Declarations of members' interest. Does any member of the Cabinet have an interest to declare relating to any item on the agenda? No? Excellent. Item 4. Announcements. I myself don't have any announcements. Do any Cabinet members have any announcements? No? Chief Executive?
No.
Thank you. Item 5, public questions. No questions from members of the public have been received for this evening's meeting. So I'll move on to item 6, concessions policy update on pages 17 to 25. I invite Councillor David Skipp, Cabinet Member for Leisure, Culture and Green Spaces, to introduce this report.
Thank you very much, Leader. The Council adopted a concessions policy last year to set a framework for people who wanted to use the Council's sites, providing for sale of food and drinks. Thus far, we've only had one trader who uses a council-owned site in line with the policy. This update to the policy is proposed to improve the application process based on lessons learned this year. The report recommends that future minor changes be approved by the relevant director in consultation with the relevant Cabinet member. Just to enlarge on this, the policy applies, as you know, to all concessions granted for operation at Horsham Museum, parks, open spaces and car parks owned by Horsham District Council. And Horsham District Council may amend this policy as and when it deems it necessary to do so. We only have one trader at the moment who has a concession, but obviously over time there may be more applications, and therefore it's right that we have a policy and that we amend it as we go on when we learn from our experience. So the recommendation is to adopt the concessions policy as set out in the appendix to this report, which I hope and trust that everyone has seen, to delegate authority to make minor changes to the policy to the relevant director in consultation with the lead Cabinet member, and to delegate authority to grant concession licences at Horsham Museum, in parks and in open spaces in line with the policy to the Head of Leisure and Culture in consultation with the Cabinet member for Leisure, Culture and Green Spaces and the relevant ward members. To delegate authority to grant concession licences in car parks in line with the policy to the Director of Resources in consultation with the Cabinet member for Finance and Resources and the relevant ward member, and to note that the monitoring officer will reflect recommendations 3 and 4 in the Council's constitution pursuant to her authority to do so per Article 13, paragraph 13.3b of the Constitution, should these be approved. Thank you.
Thanks very much, David. Are there any comments from any other Cabinet members? No. Any comments on the recommendation from other members present? No. Lovely. We have a vote of Cabinet members. Please show if you're in favour. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 7, wheeled bins contract, pages 27 to 33 of the pack. I invite Councillor Jay Mercer, Cabinet Member for Environmental Health, Waste and Recycling, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Leader. Our current
Thanks very much, Jay. Members will note there is an exempt appendix to this item, as Jay referred to, and if discussion is required regarding this, we may need to consider going into exempt session. With that in mind, do any other Cabinet members have any comments on this proposal? No. Any other members present? Comments? Councillor Clark, you start and then we'll see whether it's...
No, it won't be. It's a technical question.
Okay.
Under 11.13, you're talking about 30% recycled polymer and 70% virgin. Is that because of the physical characteristics of the bin, or is that some sort of legal limit? Do we know?
I will have to get back to you with an answer.
Any other members? No, in which case could I see a show of hands for those Cabinet members in favour of the recommendation, please? That's unanimous, thank you. Item 8. Consultation on draft conservation area appraisals and management plans for Adversane, Cowfold and West Grinstead, which weighs in at quite a considerable pages 35 to 208 of the pack. I invite Councillor Ruth Fletcher, Cabinet Member for Planning and Infrastructure, to introduce this report.
Thank you very much. Yes, ever since this item turned up, I've had a constant stream of comments about how many pages there are on the agenda devoted to this item. But never fear, it's relatively simple, and this is because it's an item that's going out for consultation, and each of the three conservation area documents can be read at their leisure by our residents during the consultation. So for context, within our district we have 39 adopted conservation areas, and we have a rolling programme of reviewing them producing conservation area appraisals and management plans. As part of this, it's now the turn of Adversane, Cowfold and West Grinstead to be reviewed, as they do not have a conservation area appraisal or management plan. Draft conservation area appraisals and management plans have therefore been produced for each of them. The outcome of these reviews are fairly straightforward. There's no major changes. The boundary of the Adversane conservation area is recommended to remain unchanged. It's recommended to extend the Cowfold conservation area to the south to include the Victorian properties of Maplebank, Arundale, Westview, Oakcroft on Henfield Road. It's also suggested that the boundary of the West Grinstead conservation area should be extended to include all of number 1 Foster's cottages instead of part of the site, and realign the boundary to the west of Foster's Barn and the east of Orchard Cottage. So as you can see, these are quite minor changes to the extent of the conservation area. The report seeks approval to publish 3 draft conservation area appraisal and management plans for a period of 5 weeks to seek the views of the local community. So engagement is necessary, but we also believe it's a really important element in achieving a designation which is informed and supported by residents and businesses. And our past experience in doing this has found it to be a very useful process, because we've had really positive feedback from local residents and businesses that have improved our understanding and enabled us to fine-tune our final report. So we'd encourage any member who is from those areas or has contact with people from those areas to get people to engage constructively with this, because it will be a listening exercise. This isn't just going to be we're doing it and it has to be like this. As part of the process, we'll be placing a notice in the local paper and sending letters to all the addresses in the conservation area to advise residents and businesses of the consultation. Following the process, a report summarising the responses and the Council's proposed response in the light of feedback will be prepared, and that will come to Cabinet in due course. So the recommendations are to commence the review. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Do any of the Cabinet members have any comments on this item? Mark?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to say, as a ward member covering Adversane, that I would like to thank the officers for a really comprehensive and well put together, even if perhaps overlong, report. And we all learned something new. I learnt that Adversane used to be called Hadfoldshire, and it was a mistaken pronunciation that changed it to Adversane. So it's always something new to learn. But yes, it's. I will just speak for Adversane because that's my patch. I will certainly encourage the residents to involve themselves in the consultation. And there are not that many residents. It's a very small hamlet, so that shouldn't take too long, hopefully. But very supportive. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Any other Cabinet members? No? I'll hazard a guess that Councillor Lambert may wish to say something. Councillor Lambert.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I thoroughly enjoyed reading these, and thank you, Nicola and Catherine, they're absolutely fabulous. And I actually found out that West Grinstead is first mentioned in the middle of the 13th century, but Grinstead was one of the 100 names, but I don't know whether it's 100 of names, in 1086. But no, it was really interesting, and I thoroughly enjoyed reading it, and I know both parishes are looking forward to this happening, so thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Councillor Lambert. I suspect it was a name of 100, which is a subdivision in a rape in Sussex, but yes. Any other members wish to comment? No? Okay then. Thank you very much. Could I see a vote from Cabinet members in favour of the recommendation, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 9, draft 2025-26 annual plan on pages 211 to 20 of the pack. I invite Councillor Tony Franklin, Cabinet Member for Performance, Customer Service and Communications, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chairman. And so this report, for the annual plan 25-26, provides an update on the progress of the drafting of the annual plan for next year. It sits within the framework of the 23 to 27 plan and outlines the projects and initiatives and work streams that we intend to achieve within the financial year 25 to 26. So it continues to focus on the 4 themes that guide us: supporting people and communities, inspiring greener futures, building a thriving local economy, and always listening, learning and improving. So under each of these themes, we have listed the specific actions and projects that will be either initiated or brought forward from the current plan. These include new items which have arisen through consultation with officers, heads of service, and also through the PD, the policy development advisory groups that we have consulted. When it comes to monitoring how we're doing against the plan, we are undergoing a review of KPIs to ensure that they indeed enable us to monitor performance and track it on a quarterly basis. And that will be available to oversight and scrutiny. So risks and mitigations, we haven't identified any significant risks in putting together this plan. There will be, of course, associated risks always with investing in the local community and the district, but we have measures in place to track such risks as they may arise. Risks of non-delivery, as I've mentioned, we will track through monitoring of performance through our KPI process. So next steps: upon completion of the review of the draft, the final annual plan report will be presented to Cabinet in January 25, with a recommendation that it's approved and referred to full council for February in the February council meeting. So if there are any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Tony. Always one of my favourite bits, this, coming up with and then delivering the annual plan. So thanks very much to you and all the officers who are working on putting this together. Very much appreciate it. Any other comments from Cabinet members present? No. Comments on the recommendations from other members, if there are any? Okay, lovely. In which case, can we go to a vote, please, of Cabinet members in favour of the recommendations? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 10, planning pre-application fees on pages 221 to 226. I invite Councillor Ruth Fletcher, Cabinet Member for Planning and Infrastructure, to introduce this report. Thanks.
Following our Planning Advisory Service review in February this year, we're now proposing a number of changes to our planning pre-app service, and we'd like to implement these from January 2025. The proposal simplifies the service for our customers, ensuring it covers our costs while still remaining competitive in order to encourage our customers to utilise it. Pre-application inquiries improve the quality of the applications we receive, so it's in our interests as well as the customers' interests to have a good level of engagement with the pre-app process. They're a great opportunity for prospective applicants to engage with us and gain insight into the requirements needed to have a successful application. Also, as the continued move towards tightening up on decision-making timeframes from government continues, it becomes more important that we get the various niggles and unknowns sorted out in a pre-app process rather than in what's going to become an increasingly constrained decision-making timeframe. So this should reduce the chances of having too many applications being turned down because they hadn't had enough work put into them at the beginning stages. So the charges are as per the appendix. It's quite a technical list there. If you've got any questions, I'll try to answer them, but if they're on the detail of particular individual line items, I may need to refer back to the officers and come back to you later.
Thanks very much, Ruth. Any comments or questions from Cabinet members on this item? Mark?
Sorry, just a clarification on the fees. I'm looking, say, for example, if we look at table 3, column N, or row N, so it costs £75 plus £75 for a site visit, so it's 150. Does that include the written response? Or is the written response in addition to that?
Right. At the moment, these applications come with two bits of service. One is that you get a response, but the other is you have a site visit. And what was decided after consulting with customers and others and the views of the officers is that very often for these small applications, the site visit really doesn't add anything of value, but it does increase the cost for the customers. So the site visit is, which is also quite arduous to provide from a resource point of view, is not being included anymore, and you just get a written response. The result is that then becomes a cheaper thing.
Sorry, not quite clear. So if you're paying 75 plus 75 for the site visit, does that include a written document of response?
Well, I said yes. You're now worrying me. I think if you need to delve into it further, we need to check with the officers to make sure that I'm not misspeaking on any of this.
Anybody else? No. Other members present. Councillor Lambert.
Thank you, Chairman. No, I'm fully in favour of this, and I like the simplification of the household pre-applications and making it more expensive for the large sites. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? No? Okay then. So can we go to a vote then, please? Cabinet members, all in favour of the recommendations, please show. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 11 then, building control fees on pages 227 to 243. Once again, I invite Councillor Ruth Fletcher to speak on this item, and just to say members will note there are exempt appendices to this item, and if discussion is required regarding these, we may need to consider going into exempt session. Thank you.
So, in essence, a similar type of item as the last one. We've reassessed our building control charges that are required to help cover the costs for the fee-earning work that we carry out. This is particularly important in the current national context, where changes in the legislation have required that building surveyors are fully qualified in order to carry out their work. This has resulted in quite a lot of the surveyors who are nearing the end of their careers leaving the industry, and there's quite a bit of turmoil in general due to shortage of suitably qualified surveyors for the different types of work. The increase in the fees is therefore required to cover the new responsibilities from the new legislative requirements and the increased associated operational costs. We're going to have temporary staffing costs now that will cover the fact that where we have to use external staff, our cost base will be higher, and there is general inflationary pressure impacting the service because of wage price inflation in the market. It's therefore important that we put these fees up now to cover these additional costs. It is, however, important to recognise that even after this, building control fees will continue to be a very small percentage of the total funding required for a successful renovation project.
Thanks very much, Ruth. Any other comments or questions on this from Cabinet members? No? Other members present? Ooh, crikey. I think Claire's was there first, so Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Leader. I'm happy to support the recommendation. It's a shame that we need to have outside staff, temporary staff, that we can't get our own full-time equivalent. I wonder how long we anticipate this is going to go on for. It might be a question you can't answer, but obviously I have some concerns that we're obviously having to use outside.
Our building control service has been really exemplary in many ways. We really have done a good job in recruiting staff and training them up. It's really entirely beyond the control of our own officers that we're ending up having to use temporary staff, and it is because of these wider national forces. To be honest, I don't think we really know how long this is going to go on for. It's hitting everybody. It's not just us that are suffering from this, and we are in many ways in better position than some of our neighbours, and we are taking appropriate measures to reorganise so that we can do the bits of the work that we can do in-house, that we can do them, so that we're not not unduly reliant on outside staff.
Councillor Lambert.
Thank you, Chairman. I fully support this. Building control is a statutory obligation. And we've been, as Councillor Fletcher says, we've been a product of our own success. And unfortunately, we've ended up where we are, and they need all the help they can get. I fully support it. They're a fabulous team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Councillor Clark.
Thank you. I tabled this at overview and scrutiny because I was concerned about the service and the implications. So essentially did it to alert the members of overview and scrutiny as to the difficulties of the service. So I support the increase in the fees, but I also note that the report says in paragraph 8.2 that the fundamental problem still remains with the service. But I think it's a good idea, and I hope that we manage to resolve the issues with recruitment promptly.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark, and yes, I fully support the approach you've taken on this and say thank you for it. I think that was everybody, so could we please move to a vote, please, on the recommendations? All Cabinet members in favour of them, please show. Okay, that's unanimous, thank you very much. Item 12, updated carbon reduction plan, pages 245 to 272. I invite Councillor Colette Blackburn, Cabinet Member for Climate Action and Nature Recovery, to introduce this report.
Thank you. Members, the Council has approved a target to be net zero for its direct emissions by 2030. The emissions come from the fuel used to heat and power the Council's operational buildings and from the fuel used in its fleet vehicles. There is a second target for the Council's indirect emissions to be net zero by 2050. These are mostly from the Council's supply chain as well as the buildings it leases. Since 2019, there have been 2 action plans to reach both of these targets, and so far there has been a 49% reduction in total emissions and a 64% reduction in direct emissions. In order to ensure that reaching our targets happens in the most operationally and cost-effective manner possible, this report recommends that the Council adopts a new 5-year carbon reduction plan which will run until the end of March 2030. It includes indicative costs for implementation as well as estimated carbon savings, and it means that the Council will have a clear roadmap for achieving its aims. The plan will be reviewed regularly to ensure that any future funding opportunities or relevant technological advances may be incorporated as appropriate. There are ongoing considerations such as, subject to electrical capacity at the depot, smaller vehicles will continue to be electrified. Also, during the time period of the plan, the refuse vehicles will need to be replaced, and options for the best low-carbon replacements will be explored, from using HVO fuel to EV or hydrogen. The plan includes a programme for reducing carbon emissions from the Council's operational buildings. This will focus on greater energy efficiency, such as increased insulation, as well as removing gas heating. The plan includes a projection for potential emissions reduction that could be achieved by 2030. At the moment, this suggests that approximately 400 tonnes of carbon will still be emitted from the fleet and operational buildings by then. This means that some element of carbon offsetting will be required. Therefore, the plan includes an action to establish the principles for this approach, as well as exploration of the options, including cost implications. The report contains the capital budget of 1.525 million required to implement works during 2025-2026. However, this is not reflective of just the decarbonisation element. For example, the vehicles in the fleet would need to be replaced regardless of the Council's net zero targets, and the costs of works to some of the buildings also include refurbishment. However, it's not feasible or desirable to extrapolate carbon reduction costs alone in the financial reporting. The 3 recommendations to Cabinet can be seen in the report. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Colette. Without taking anything away from any of the people who got us to where we are, I think we're at a point where the closer you get towards the end, the harder it gets, because you do the easier stuff early. So I think having a clear plan and those targets going forward is really important, both for achieving it and also for having transparency. So yes, I support this. Any other comments from other Cabinet members, please? No. Comments from other members present. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Leader. Whatever one thinks about carbon reduction plans, I'm glad to see that at least it seems to be progressing, which is positive. I also am glad that we seem to be approaching a practical approach to these things rather than a doctrinal one. So we're not necessarily wedded to things like heat source pumps, for example, but we're looking at other things, and it's been confirmed by officers that we are looking at alternatives, which might be just as efficient. However, I draw the attention of the Cabinet that I got an email from Councillor Grant about the adoption of hydrogen fuel by buses and other vehicles in Crawley. So I would commend to the Cabinet member for a refuse that it might be worth exploring that option and looking at hydrogen fuel rather than electric vehicles, because that might be a way forward that this Council could consider. I'm not saying it's a done deal, but I think it's worth considering in the future. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark, for that suggestion, and I agree with you on that one. Jay, did you want to say anything else coming back on that one?
Well, just briefly, Councillor Clark, I think you'll be aware that at the moment we're reducing the carbon emitted by our vehicles by using HVO fuel, and that makes a significant difference. Yes, clearly electric vehicles may well be the way forward, but we haven't made those decisions yet, in particular because there aren't any we're not convinced that some of the electric vehicles can actually do the job that we need to be done, and that's where technology will have to catch up. So hydrogen is clearly one of the possible alternatives.
Sorry if I may, Leader.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to flag this in because I didn't want it to go unnoticed, and I'm sure it hasn't gone unnoticed by officers at least. But I thought politicians should be aware of it because it may well be an elegant solution to the problems of electric vehicles getting up Berry Hill. Thank you, Leader.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Croker.
Thank you, Leader. There's a sentence in paragraph 6.4, which Councillor Clark obliquely referred to, saying, however, different technologies to replace gas boilers will be considered to minimise expenditure. I'm curious as to what those different technologies might be, because to my mind, it's not just about carbon, there's also efficiency. And I'd be reluctant to see us pursuing a somewhat short-term, what I regard as short-term plan that ignores efficiency and just focuses on cost and carbon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Croker. There may be someone else who wants to respond, but all I would say is that beforehand, and hopefully I'm not going to turn out to be wrong, I think the best approach is a holistic approach, really, in terms of how you get to the right endpoint. I mean, I wouldn't want us not to be looking at insulation and efficiency. I think clearly that's very important to do wherever possible. Other sources, I hazard to guess that maybe it's electricity potentially that's being looked at. But I dare say there's probably a balancing point in terms of, like, you know, cost, how much you put into one aspect of the formula and how much you put into the other. The main thing is, because we still have to be conscious of how much we end up spending overall, and making sure that we meet our carbon targets. So, yeah, I think I would hope that we're looking for the best approach holistically, but Colette may have more to say on it.
Well, I was going to suggest Helen might like to respond.
I think you've said it very eloquently, Martin, to be perfectly honest with you. Yes, I think if the head of property was here, that is exactly what she would be saying. So yes, we will be looking at a holistic approach. And as Paul Clark has alluded to as well, we're not always going to be wedded to the use of air source heat pumps. We will be looking at electric heating as well. As we know, the electricity grid is going to be decarbonised. The current government have suggested that they will bring that forward. So I know the ambition is very big and may not be achieved, but 2030 is what they're talking about. So there is always going to be that balance. And so we have not determined yet, in terms of this next programme for the next year at least, exactly what additional heating will be used to take out gas. Basically, that's the aim, is to look at energy efficiency first, but also the requirement to decarbonise heat, which means removing gas boilers. So we will be looking at different forms of technology. And you're right, it's either going to be electric heating, direct electric heating, or air source heat pumps. But sometimes those aren't practical either. So all of those things will be considered in the round.
You don't look entirely satisfied, Mike.
I remain somewhat sceptical about the country's decarbonisation of electricity, put it that way. In that timescale, I think there's a risk there. Thank you.
I don't blame you, but we do what we can. Councillor Fletcher.
I wanted to just kind of reinforce the fact that obviously an air source heat pump offers a significant coefficient of performance improvement over just direct electrical heating. So I'm sure we're not going to be going willy-nilly for electric heaters, where direct electric heaters, where something that offered a substantially higher coefficient of performance was technically feasible. And
Any other comments from members present? No. In which case, we go to a vote of Cabinet members, please. All those in favour of the recommendations, please show. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Item 13, Statement of Licensing Policy, pages 273 to 312. I invite Councillor Jay Mercer, Cabinet Member for Environmental Health, Waste and Recycling, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Leader. I'm sure members will remember with fondness that it is a requirement of the Licensing Act 2003 that licensing authorities publish a statement of licensing policy at least every 5 years. And we had provisional approval of the draft of this at full council in June. And since then, the council's alcohol licensing policy has been subject to public consultation. Comments were received specifically from the Responsible Authority for Public Health. These support the collaborative approach of the District Council. Furthermore, they add clarity to the risks associated with the misuse of alcohol, as well as qualifying consumption of alcohol figures and guidance in regard to consumption of alcohol by children and pregnant women. And so these supportive comments have been welcomed, and they've been included in the policy from the draft version you saw before. So this version has those comments in them, and it's brought forward for approval. No other amendments or alterations to the policy are being proposed, and Cabinet is therefore recommended to agree that the statement of licensing policy set out in the Appendix A to the report be formally adopted.
Thanks very much, Jay. Any comments on this one from the Cabinet members? No. Other members present? Councillor Clark.
Just a question. In the appendix, it says it's a 5-year policy. It doesn't say when it starts. Presumably, does it start from today, or does it start from council date, or what? It's not clear.
My understanding is it starts from the date that we approve it today, because we have authority to do so. But I'm looking at
If I may come in there, this policy has to be approved by full council because it forms part of the policy framework. So it'll be effective from the date of adoption, which is the date that is approved by the full council. This policy forms part of the council's policy framework, which has to be approved by full council. So it'll come into effect once full council adopts it formally. The date approved by full council, not today.
Okay. Any other comments on this one? No. In which case, can we go to a vote of Cabinet members, please? All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 14, protection of Horsham Park, on pages 313 to 317 of the pack. I invite Councillor David Skipp, Cabinet Member for Leisure, Culture and Green Spaces, to introduce this report.
Thank you very much, Leader. I think we've heard it said many times, Horsham Park is one of the jewels in Horsham's crown, and as an administration, we want to ensure that this remains the case for all future Horsham generations. In the executive summary of this item, you will see that the report seeks approval for officers to explore options to secure the protection of Horsham Park as a park and public open space. And this is in response to numerous and many requests for us to look at the future of Horsham Park, to protect it as an public open space in perpetuity. And when it came to PDAG, I was slightly surprised by the expressions of disagreement that came forth. In fact, they were quite robust. And it seems to me that a PDAG should take note of those comments that are made and those suggestions that are made by its members. And this is what this report is seeking to achieve by taking note of all the comments, both positive and those that were, let me say, negative, and taking note of those comments and trying to assess where we are. The Friends of the Park, who you will have heard about, and know about, were very keen that we look at this particular issue. And one of the issues, or one of the areas that has come forward is that of the Fields in Trust. Fields in Trust, as you know, is an organisation created in 1925. I believe it used to be called the National Playing Fields Association. It's changed its name now to Fields in Trust, and it is a national organisation. And in fact, we do have several places within our district who are in the Fields in Trust. The idea being that the Fields in Trust does not interfere with our management of the park, and it is only called upon in instances where there may be building or interference with the green space, which is not in accord with the original idea of preserving that space for public and residents to undertake enjoyment and also sporting activities. So that is one of the options that is before us. There were others put forward, and we will explore those other options as well in this next few months. So we have a recommendation that the Director of Communities, in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Leisure and Culture, to work with Fields in Trust to assess the viability of placing Horsham Park into trust under the Fields in Trust scheme, and that a further report be developed for consideration by Cabinet with a final proposal, including the deed of dedication if appropriate. So the recommendation is quite clear. The executive summary says that the officers are going to explore options, and therefore I have no hesitation in recommending this to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thanks very much, David. Are there any questions or comments from other Cabinet members, please? No. Other members present. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I know there were some concerns expressed at the PDAC, and I'm reassured to hear that all options are going to be considered. There were some cost concerns obviously expressed at that meeting as well. So I'm happy to support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Croker.
Thank you, Leader. Likewise, I appreciate that there is a little bit of second thought going on here. I would like to ask, though, ultimately, will this decision be made by Cabinet alone, or will it come to full council?
Thank you, Councillor Croker. As that's essentially a constitutional question, I'll defer to the monitoring officer on that one.
A decision such as this will rest with and is the responsibility of Cabinet as executive and not full council, and that's reflected in the law in the Local Government Act 2000.
Okay, thank you for the explanation.
Thank you. Any other comments from members present? No. In which case, could I ask for a vote of Cabinet members? All those in favour of the proposals, please show. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Item 15, Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I invite Councillor Paul Clark, Chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, to speak on any matters the Cabinet would like to the committee would like to refer to Cabinet. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Clark. Item 16 is the forward plan. This item is essentially for noting, but does any Cabinet member have anything to say on this item? No, thank you. Item 17, to consider matters of special urgency. There are no matters of special urgency to consider this evening. Therefore, thank you all very much and close this meeting.